Hi guys, Professor Davis here. I wanted to go over lesson 7, module 7, because I feel like I'm getting a few questions, and I know this one can sometimes be a little tricky. Um, Basically, it is the culmination of the semester, and so it may seem sort of confusing to some people because we still have another week after this week, and you may think, well, this can't possibly be the final project when we still have another week, but it is. So, I want to just quickly look at those modules and make sure everyone is clear. This again, we have redesigned, and by we, not me, but SNHU has redesigned this course for this semester. So a lot of this is brand new to me as well in some parts, in some ways. It's a little different than it was before. I'm sorry, my chair is super squeaky. So if you hear what sounds like birds, it's actually my chair missing a screw and it's just going squeak, squeak, squeak. But so I want to just share my screen with you really quickly. And is this, where is it? Let me find that page. Nope, I want that one. All right. Um, I'm going to share my screen with you. Um, you should be able to see this now. Yeah. Okay, good. So basically, if you were to pop on to module 7, this is where you'd land. And so this entire module looks very similar to last week's, which is why I did the announcement that I did saying, listen, I know this week 6 may look kind of weird because it sounds like it's telling you to do something, but if I just pop into week 6 really quickly, oops, I am in week 6, you'll see it says project reminder. So I did that last week where I just kind of showed you guys that. And then when you come into module 7, it says project submission. So last week, but it looks identical. That to me is a little weird. It's a little confusing, and it was confusing for several of you, which is why I put out the announcement last week clarifying. But basically, what they want you to do is sort of this get used to this idea of iterations. It's sort of like as a journalist, something we do, which is just proofing and editing and rewriting. So you proof, you edit, you rewrite, 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 rewrite in journalism. Well, you do the exact same thing in web design. You go back in, and instead of maybe rewriting, which you do a lot of that too, some of the copy you may need to massage a little bit to make it make more sense, to make it maybe flow better for SEO, or just to find grammatical errors, typos, things like that. So here they're calling it iterations, which is, sometimes that's multiple versions of a thing, like where do you start versus where you end, the various iterations of it. So that's essentially what they are asking you to do, is to sort of get into this mode of iterative design, which is where you keep going back and proofing and making sure links work and making sure that the message that you want to communicate is what's being communicated, that images look correct, that everything loads properly on your mobile device on multiple different on different screens. um, just that is all the iterative design, just making sure, and you keep going back in and checking. WordPress is especially heavy on iterative design because it requires constant upgrades and updates. So you upgrade things and you update things constantly. One of the things that I do as a web designer for my clients is the maintenance of their websites, which could be, they add on a new person to their staff and they want me to add their picture and bio to the, team page or something, or they move, they want me to update the address, or something where they have constant updates. It's an e-commerce site, and so merchandise changes constantly. And so they want to add or take away different products and things like that. All of that is a part of that iterative process of constantly making sure that the site is functioning correctly and that it looks correct. So that's what this section here is all about. Making sure that you go through here and understand that that is a part of design. And in WordPress specifically, we do a lot of going in and doing updates, a lot of updates. You have to keep those plugins and keep the themes updated. And also WordPress itself puts out updates of its entire software platform, maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. they update to a new version. So you keep doing that. But in the case of for you guys, really the iterations are just go make sure those pictures are right. Specifically for this class, it's about making sure you have input the changes that I've asked you to make. Go look at the feedback. A lot of times I say, go look at the rubric because I spell out you lost 5 points or 2 points or something. Where did those points go? Why were they taken? I will explain why they were taken. You still have your sidebar there and there's nothing in it. You have your navigation is in the wrong order. Home must come first on the navigation. You must have a home page link on your navigation. It's not enough to do something creative with some kind of, image or something. You have to have those words there. Certainly as you are learning, for sure. Once you get really good at it and you've been doing it for years, a lot of these rules can be bent, but that's usually not one that can be bent because that confuses people. You have to understand too that although you may want to flex your design muscle and be very creative, the people coming to your site might be an accountant company. It may be a tax company. It may be someone who mows lawns for a living. You may work for a grocery store or a bank and you're doing their website. So the people that come to the site are not you. They're not going to understand all of the graphic things that you're doing if you sacrifice the function for the graphic. So you have to make sure that things are very clean and clear. That's why we learned about UX and UI, that things are easy to navigate, that it's intuitive how to get to different things, that things work the way people are used to seeing them work in normal websites. I've seen a couple where the sites go to the side now, but not in a normal way. That's fine if the only people coming to you to utilize your services are going to be people who are exactly like you. Or if your site is solely, just for show, it is not in any way to get business, like you just want to show things on it. But if it's in any way to as sort of a storefront for your services or your products, it has to make sense to the average person going on the site. And so those kinds of UX things are really, really, really important, that people can easily get to things. And then also just the aesthetics, that it all makes sense when people look at it, that it doesn't feel as though it was done by a person who just put their site together on their own. It needs to be clear that it's a professionally developed site. Now, many of your sites may not necessarily cross that threshold entirely at this point because it's new to you. What I'm looking for, though, is just that I see, one, the growth, and two, that you've implemented the things that they've asked you to implement. So, for instance, that you do have home, about, portfolio, and contact, that you have at least those 4 pages. That you have something in your footer. And a lot of these themes did not provide the space for the master footer in the traditional way that we would have it. And so I addressed that with you guys in an announcement as well. And I also sent that message off to the developers of the course, just to say there's nowhere for them to put it. So a lot of you found that footer block that you could add, but a footer really is part of what we used to call in old days a master page, which was you would create the master page first and then replicate it for every page, and then you'd add your content in the middle. But the master page had the same header and footer. And essentially sites still work exactly like that. It's just you don't make it when you're using something like WordPress or even the drag and drops like Wix and Weebly. You don't manually make that. It's created automatically by having a footer that you fill in, and then it populates on all of the pages, having a header that you create and it populates on all of the pages. So you have to have those things there. I'm just going to go now quickly. So this is that iterative, what they were referring to is just sort of go back in. If you read through all of this, you will see that they talk very much about, this is about basically proofreading, editing, maybe rewriting, maybe picking a different image, making sure you have implemented my feedback, get rid of, that bright green background or that bright purple background, or you used, a paisley background, that it just doesn't look aesthetically clean. It may make the site look a little cluttered. Change those things. Make sure your pictures are proportionate, that they're not skewed by being stretched because you need it to be bigger. But to make an image bigger in design, we don't stretch it. We either create it in Illustrator so that it's a vector image that can easily be just resized. It will pop in and automatically resize itself. Or you have to go in and find a way to actually crop the picture and resize it into a way that makes sense for your header or for wherever you're using that image. I'm now going to go into, actually could have just kind of swiped through, but the project submission. So again, I have to say, I did this the first week and I'll say it again. When you click here, you're not going to get anything. There's not much here other than what was already there. This is where you need to click to make sure that you actually get all of the actual information for the assignment. But for this particular assignment, as I've said repeatedly, but this one is very important because I know this one might be a little more confusing, you need to go to the rubric. So what's the first criteria that I'm grading? Portfolio site initial development sitemap. Iterates to improve the sitemap for the portfolio site is proficient. That would get you 85% of the total points, which are probably maybe 10 points. I don't know. I don't know how many of these we have. Maybe 10 points. Oh, it's a 6. It says 6 there, but I don't. Yeah, 6. That's right. I forgot. This is something different. Thinking of a different class. So 6 points. So, that might get you 4.5 points or something like that. This gets you your 6 points. Down here, you get no points. In here, maybe you get 3.5 points or something. Who knows? I don't know what it is. Yeah, something like that. But what I'm looking for is, did you iterate that sitemap? So in the announcement that I sent out, to pop back in here to this side, in the announcement, I said, make sure that you, let's see, if I can find it. This week, make sure you turn in your prior sitemaps with any changes that reflect your actual website. It should look like your site. So you may have given me one thing at the beginning of the semester. They want to see that you have now iterated on that sitemap and revised it, for lack of a better word, to reflect what you actually created. Make sure your site has the required pages. We talked about that. Make sure that you submitted your mission statement, that the submitted mission statement you gave me in that assignment is what I see on your website. Now, if you have modified that, that's great, to make it more substantive and also to, in all caps, incorporate your keywords. We don't do hashtags on websites. We don't do, there was a thing that people used to do back in the olden days, and it's illegal now to do, for lack of a better word, which was they would write a bunch of keywords in all white so that it blended into the background. I forget the name of that. I know the name, but it escapes me. And that way people would come to their site for anything. They would put Beyonce on there. They would put Toyota on there, and it would be in white lettering so you couldn't see it. But then when people search for Toyota, your site would pop up. And you guys have probably all been a victim of that. Some random site pops up after you do a search and it has nothing to do with what you wanted. And sometimes you even click on it and it's like, what is this? This has nothing to do. Well, it used to be a little trick. Now your site can get taken down if you do things like that. There are a lot of things that'll happen. They'll stop popping it up in the search criteria. It won't pop up anymore because that's not allowed. But that's why I say you incorporate your keywords into your text, into your copy. So you don't just say, where I'm in St. Louis, the St. Louis area, St. Louis web designer, St. Louis graphic designer, St. Louis websites. I can't just say that. I have to put that into a paragraph. I have to make that flow. But I do want that because if someone is looking for a web designer in this area, they're going to go to Google and type St. Louis web designer. Just like if I'm looking for someone to, finish my floors, I'm going to look for a St. Louis floor refinisher. So they need to have that as part of their content in their site, because that's how Google, Yahoo, Bing, and all the search engines, that's how they tell you that's how they populate the search results. They look for those kind of key phrases that make sense. And they look for other things too, but those fall further down into your results list. I should tell you, SEO is an entire beast of its own. There are entire companies that do just SEO and they do nothing else. That is a whole science and an entire thing that takes a lot of work. We are not doing that level. That is an entire branch of web design. And what we're doing here is just the very tip of the iceberg of that, which is keywords. Things like alt tags, I think they mentioned doing that. So on a picture, when you upload the picture to your media section in WordPress, go ahead and fill out that alt tag with what the picture is. That helps with accessibility, but it also helps with allowing you just another area where you can put some type of SEO. So if it is a picture of a bird, then you say, you know, for my company, I would say, you know, Pilar Davis Media bird, or I might say Pilar Davis Media bluebird, or something like that. So that, or bluebird Pilar L. Davis Media or something, so that if it is an accessibility issue, someone knows that it's a bluebird, but also my name is there again, or St. Louis web designer bluebird, or bluebird homepage St. Louis web designer, something that again pulls that SEO. And these are the most rudimentary pieces of SEO. So please do not think this is the top and bottom of SEO. It's not. It's the very, very, very beginning of how SEO can be incorporated into your website. But those are some of the things that you can do. So make sure you have included those keywords. And remember, I gave a lot of you feedback because a lot of you did things like fun, innovative, energetic. Those are not keywords for what you're looking to do. What you're looking for in keywords are things that someone would search in Google to find your website. What do you do? So it should have something to do with your location, something to do with what your actual field is. If you're a photographer, St. Louis photographer, something like that. But there's so many things you can use for keywords. Fun, gifted, energetic, those might be somewhere else and make sense in another way. Especially if you're doing something like for a kid's site or something, maybe those work. And they may even work for this. You may want to do, because I know some of you have sort of an edgy kind of funky style. If that's the case, then maybe you do say edgy web designer, or maybe I think one of you has this thing with weird. So weird graphic designer, or weird graphic designer, weird photos, or weird photographer, or something like that, so that there may be that rare person that searches for that. But you still want to have sort of the generic things there as well, because those are what's going to be seen most on a search. All right, so I'm going to go back into 7 here, module 7's explanation, and just kind of pay attention to iterate to improve your sitemap. Well, again, they explained to you what iterate meant in the section right before this, where they ask you to read up on what is iterate. What does that mean? Sorry, that's to the wrong place. Right before here. Oops, that's module 4. Fine, come out of here. Let's go to my module. So, all right. So right before this, you have this. What does that mean? And you actually probably had it in 6 as well, because this one is almost identical to 6. But this article describes what is iterative design, what is the design process and its advantages, and explains what that is. So if hopefully you looked at all of those things, perused them at the very least, and kind of gotten an idea of what they mean by that. Then when you come in here and it says iterate to improve your sitemap, you know what they're asking you to do. So recall that you may include additional pages beyond those required if you would like. So you may have done a sitemap that had home, about, contact, and portfolio, but then when you actually did your site under portfolio, you did 2 more subpages. You need to put that on your sitemap. You need to revise your sitemap to reflect that you changed it in some way. Then it says select a theme. Well, you know, you already did that. I'm just checking to see that you select the theme. All of you did. Did you activate the theme? So yes, you did. So everyone who did the site will get those points. There's nothing more to do. They're telling you these are all the things you did prior in the semester but not everyone did them. I mean, you know, in any semester, I always have students that maybe didn't do the assignments correctly, or they haven't done them right. They haven't finished where they're supposed to be. And we're now at the end. Did they do this? Do you have the required pages? The required pages, it must have home, about, portfolio, and contact. Somebody may have done about, portfolio, and contact and not done the home. So you lose points there. I'm just looking to see, are all those things there? I've graded that before for you. If you didn't have it, I said, hey, I don't see your homepage link. Make sure you have it in there. And you guys are amazing at making sure you put in all of the things I ask you for. You're like, oh, I didn't see it. I see it now, or I thought I could do this. I couldn't. Okay, fine. And so that's great. That's the iterative process, that you are going back in and making those changes because you realize, oops, I forgot to put contact. I did everything but the contact page. Well, I would have told you that already. You would have got that feedback from me by now. Or maybe it was there before. You've done some changes. Some of you wanted to change your theme. I'm fine with that. We change themes all the time. When I started teaching this class a while ago, I changed my theme to one of the themes that they were using so that I could show on my professional website, so that I could show them how you could actually move throughout that site and do some things. The only problem is Campus Press doesn't have nearly as many resources as WordPress proper has. WordPress, the actual app, has a ton more. But I tried to just stay within what they would have in Campus Press and show them how you could do some things. I also changed the format of my site significantly to make it a little more streamed down so that people could follow it, because sometimes I do use it as an example, and then make it a little simpler to follow for all of my students that are kind of just learning WordPress. I made it a little more, not rudimentary. Well, rudimentary was probably a good enough word. But, you know, as you guys know, when you looked at the portfolio sites that you used the first couple of weeks to just show what one you liked, you saw what you can do. The sky's the limit. You could do all kinds of things on your portfolio site. But I really wanted to be able to show a real world version of what my students would be expected to do. So my site is a little different now than it was a while ago when I first started teaching this course. Again, make sure you have those pages in the navigation. Make sure the links work. Use the menu tool. You guys already know that. Make sure you go into menu if you need to rearrange your navigation. If home is the third link, it cannot be the third link. It must be the first link. Go into menu and rearrange those. I also showed you guys how to do that as well. And then we get down here where it talks about your portfolio site. See, all of this was sort of all the stuff we've already done. Make sure all of this is right, but go in here and make any changes to your sitemap and resubmit that sitemap with the version that matches your current site. Portfolio site, written and visual content. So, you know, you wrote some things. You did your mission statement. I need to see that. Include at least 3 keywords that represent your qualities. That's within your mission statement, not just 3 words on top of in the middle of a page. It has to be part of your statement. So just make sure that's there and make sure any feedback I gave you is incorporated. Your copy. So now this is on the About Me page. You should have a good amount of copy there. It just tells people about you. And you guys were wonderful with that. You did a great job on that. But again, just make sure that's right. Check your grammar, check your punctuation, check your spelling. If you did have a CTA in there, go make sure it works. There were a couple that didn't work. They said something like, here, you can go to my resume. When I clicked it, I couldn't go anywhere. It didn't have a link. So make sure that link is there. Your hero image, things like that. Make sure it's right. Several of you, I said, listen, this hero image is skewed in some way. Go ahead and make sure you implement those changes I said about pop it into Photoshop and either crop it to the correct size, which means you may lose some of the image, but crop it so that it looks nice. The bigger issue is not cropping it smaller. The bigger issue is if it's too small. So that's why they had you find out what your image, your header image dimensions needed to be, because you need to at least start there, but really higher than there, so that when it pops in perfect. But at least if it said something like 1600 by 400, it needs to be exactly that to look perfect. If you make it bigger, you can crop it, or it will resize automatically, which is fine. A little bit. I don't advise you to make any of the images too big, because they will, on some people's screens, they will load very slowly. If they don't have really good Wi-Fi, it will load very slowly. So that's what iterate means. I wanted to make sure I was clear about this part. You guys can kind of infer the rest, but you're going back over it. Make sure it's good. Go back into your grades and look at where I gave you feedback. Even if you got a perfect score, I still maybe gave you some feedback on something like, I didn't take points off, but make sure you do this. It wasn't something that could really, it didn't need to have points deducted, but I want to remind you, you had a bright pink kind of Pepto-Bismol background, or you had a, you know, a checkered background that was kind of hard on the eyes, or whatever it might have been. And I said, listen, I'm not going to take points off, but change that. Make that light gray, super light gray. The background you see here is a pretty standard background for a website. This is kind of white. If you were to pop this into Photoshop and compare it to true white, which would be a hex of just all Fs, then you would see it's not quite white, but it's close. The gray backgrounds, if you pop that in, you'll see it's a very, 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 very light gray, extremely light gray. Sometimes it's a blue. It's a very light blue, almost indistinguishable that it is blue. And those are good. The white, the gray, the blue, incredibly light, are often what we use for websites. Black fonts. Don't do bright colored fonts unless they're like a heading or something. You can, once you've become a web developer and you really know how to work with color theory and fonts and typography and all of that, then yes, you know how to do it. But it's just like driving a car. When you first start, should you back down the street going 35? No. I've been driving for, oh gosh, I don't even know. I won't even say. I've been driving for some decades. I can back down a city block going 35 and I won't hit anything. But I wouldn't advise that for someone that's 16 and just getting their driver's license. You first have to learn how to do it, and then you know how to do some of the things that take a little more skill. So simple is best. Even if you want to be quirky, even if you want to do something really funky and avant-garde, there's a way to do that that looks professional and polished, as opposed to sort of hodgepodge. There's a difference. So, you know, you're doing all of the iterations, go through and make sure all of your pages look the way they're supposed to look, links work, pictures are correct, any animations are moving the way they're supposed to move, plugins work, all of that. And then you're going to get to your justification paper. Okay. And in your paper, always put your link to your site, whether it tells you to do it or not. Put the link to the site, because otherwise I have to try to find your site. And I have to go back and find it. So always put the site in there, always put a link to your site in there so I can go straight to it. But it tells you to do that anyway. Go ahead and write your paper. You're going to explain how you selected the theme, because for some of you, you changed your theme. Go ahead and explain that. Because why did you change your theme? What was it about the other theme that didn't really work for what you wanted to do, or just didn't work in general, that you just didn't like? And now what about this new one proves better for your site? Explain how your portfolio demonstrates the effective use of the application of web design principles and best practices. So things like, well, I've got my hero image at the top and it's cropped perfectly, or it's the right size. I made sure to scale it to the proper size. I've got my navigation there and it's clear and easy to follow. All of the links work. All of the pages are done. Don't accidentally create pages and then forget to put content on them. If you've got those sub pages in there, it's got to have some content on there. Make sure your homepage has your mission statement, has a good amount of text on it. Not too much, but you know, maybe that much, you know, just a little paragraph about your site. Just for this class. In real world, you probably need a little more than that. In fact, quite a bit more than that, just to sort of explain things about what your site does, what you do, and all of that. And then what to submit whenever you're trying to figure out, what am I giving you? They gave me all of this. What do you actually need to hand in to submit your sitemap as a PDF, and submit your short paper with your link. And your link should link to your site, which has gone through that iterative design process. Okay? Hopefully that explains it. Because I know, I don't know, it's a little weird to me too. Um, I see what they're trying to do, but I could see why it would confuse people, especially if you learn better verbally. I could definitely understand that. So that's what you're going to do. Make sure you revise your sitemap if it needs it. If you did any changes to it, if not, submit the sitemap you gave me the first time. If you did have any changes, it should match your site. And then write that paper out. Make sure it explains what you did, all of the questions that it asks, the prompts, make sure you respond to those. Again, this is a paper. For those of you who often do this thing where you kind of respond to it like it's a discussion post, this is a college paper, MLA style. You need to have your heading in the top left and all of the criteria for the heading, your name, the date, my name, the class, all of the whatever it is that you need. I don't know if MLA requires you to have something in the header, but if it does, put it there. If it's a page number, if it's a last name, whatever it is, make sure you have it there. Make sure that if you do cite anyone else's work, any of the reading materials, that you do your in-text citation, which is where you put the little parentheses and put the person's last name and the page number, MLA, page number, right? Or year maybe. I know APA is year. It might be page number. And then that should correspond to your citations or your works cited page or your citations page, whatever you choose to call it. And then I should see a full citation there, not just the last name, but format it correctly. You're doing, they explain to you in the instructions how to format the paper in terms of the font size, the margins, the font type, and all of that. So hopefully, I was trying to get through this very quickly. Hopefully that explains it all to you. If anyone was having any questions. And next week, we get a little bit of a breather with what you have to do. You're just going to kind of reflect on the course a little bit. But this is when your website is due. This Sunday, your website is due. And by the way, remember guys, next week, nothing late can be submitted because I have to have grades in immediately following the class. So I will likely get grades in Sunday night, if not Monday morning. If I have everybody's things, I get it in Sunday night. If I still have some students who are kind of straggling behind and they're getting it in at midnight on Sunday night, of course, I'm not going to put in the grades without that. But then I'm doing it bright and early, first thing Monday morning, and getting that in. I'm in Central Time, by the way. And I'm going to get that in. We have to have it in almost immediately. So make sure there's no late submissions for week 8. And really, I wouldn't risk having a late submission for this week either, because you risk the chance of it getting in so late that it misses the cutoff. Because like I said, I'm putting the grades in probably Sunday night, next Sunday night, not this Sunday coming up, but next Sunday night, because they're due Monday morning or something, maybe Tuesday morning. I don't know, I have to look again, but they're usually due like within a day, if not 2 days, sometimes with 2 days. So there are no late submissions accepted. So please make sure you have everything in. The only things that are accepted right now are week 6 is accepted now. Week 5 is no longer accepted. So if you haven't gotten that in, obviously that time is already passed. Week 6, you can still get in by Sunday. Week 7 is due Sunday. And again, I strongly caution you not to wait and try to cram in 3 weeks worth of assignments into one Sunday. I wouldn't do that. So get all of that in. And again, grades go in. I have to submit the grades by a certain date. Hopefully that answers everyone's questions. And we are done with discussions. So I can't say see you in the discussions, but it has been a pleasure. I hope everyone learned something. Practice color theory. Learn about the color wheel and the different colors that complement each other. Learn about font theory, typography, and what fonts you use for different things and why we don't use cursive fonts for a lot of things, even though a lot of new designers love to do that. Get rid of the cursive fonts. That's for later when you really know how to do it. Get rid of the backgrounds on your website that doesn't really look at, and on your graphic design, like if you're doing a flyer. Do a nice plain background until you really learn how to work with patterns and colors and textures and fonts. try to keep it simple. No bold, I mean, no borders on, or not borders, no a stroke on your fonts. Do not outline your fonts. Just leave them plain. If the font seems too sort of mealy for what you're using, use a different font. Use an Arial Black or something that gives you a nice, good, solid font, um, or something like that. But don't add a border or shadow around it. We're we're away from those things. Those used to be very popular, but they're not really used as often. And when they are used, it's because we know exactly how to do it so that it doesn't look like there's a novice working and they're kind of using all the bells and whistles. So those are my little tips. And hopefully you guys had a great semester. It has been a pleasure as always. And I will talk to you soon if you have any questions. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.